Nice to meet you all. I know all of us are a little bit hungry, so let's have a look at how merchants see the transition to DSS 4. We've heard a lot this morning upstairs about how the council sees transition to DSS 4. Verizon has explained to us how they, as an assessor and as a consultant, considers how DSS 4 has to be implemented. But let's look at how merchants, let's say the last part of the chain, consider this. But before we go into the details, Schwarz Group, who are these guys? Honestly speaking, Schwarz Group is a German-based company. Most of you living in Europe might know them by the Lidl brand. Some of you in Central and Eastern Europe might also know Kaufland, mainly present in Germany and Central and Eastern Europe. But we also do production, waste and recycling. And recently we started our own cloud business. And even more recently, we just acquired a cybersecurity firm, Exam Cyber. So all of that is Schwarz Group. Not only selling bananas, but producing coffee and doing lots of other things. But if we look into the payment side of the things, with 13,500 stores, more or less, we have a lot to do on the payment side. Lots of tills, lots of ECRs, and lots of payment terminals out there. So how do we do PCI DSS at Schwarz? The first thing we have to understand is we put payment security into our ISMS. It's an integral part of our SMS. Our SMS is based upon ISO 27001, but we consider that it's critical and important that we define security policies also for the payment landscape. And within this payment security section of our ISMS, we have defined something I call the thesis number 0. We do not store any card holder data within our systems. We do not need this. We only have a checkout process. Unlike other sectors, other industries, which have also a check-in process, we don't have this check-in process. So therefore, we don't need to store card holder data. We will see afterwards why this is important and highly interesting. Then, of course, we have described the PCI DSS compliance process, what needs to be taken into account for each and every payment channel. And for the card-present payment channels, we have defined a few additional requirements. First thing is P2PE certified and listed solutions. You might wonder, those of you coming from the UK area, you might wonder, hey, why is this to be explicitly stated? But if you're living in other areas of Europe, you might understand us. Second specific requirement, no pin entry recording by the CCTV infrastructure. You know, at our stores, we operate quite a lot of CCTV infrastructure, and it might be the case that by coincidence, depending on the angle of the cameras and on the angle of the payment terminal, we might be recording the pin entry. This is nothing we are allowed to do. We know that by the DSS. And the third thing, which is absolutely unique, at least in Europe, is that we have tethered our payment terminals to the stand with a tiny yellow seal. And on this yellow seal, there is a barcode printed. And with an app and a mobile device, we are able to scan this barcode and make sure the regular inspection of the terminals as prescribed by DSS 992. So these are some explicit requirements we have set out for card-present payment channels. If we look into the payment landscape, payment different channels we operate roughly about 120 different payment channels, local payment channels. If you remember the map initially, we don't have this global solution covering all use cases. We also have local payment channels. So we have them for the card present use case, and we have them for the card not present use case. And for the card present use case, taking the assumption that we do not store any cardholder data, we assume that we are eligible to the SAQ BIP. Or even better, if we have implemented a certified and listed P2PE solution, then we are eligible to the SAQ P2PE, regardless of if we are talking about attended POIs, semi-attended POIs, or even unattended POIs. On the card not present side of the things, we operate some online shops, but we also have some hybrid payment channels. Those of you living and working in Spain, Poland, or Germany might be able to use Lidl Pay. It's an in-app payment module in our Lidl Plus loyalty program. So we have different sets of things, but for the online use case, we have strictly mandated that we only operate under an SAQA, meaning that we embed the iframe of the PCI DSS certified, trusted third party. Let's look into DSS finally. So this is the official timeline. Nothing new, no secrets, everything fine. But what did we do at Schwarz to understand that? First thing is we participated as a participating organization into the various different RFCs of DSS4. And this provided an additional insight. So we had, even though they were just drafts, but we were understanding where the council wanted DSS4 to be brought up. Once the documents were published, we did an internal gap analysis versus 3.2.1, which we expanded in circles. So first internal, and then we went to the QSA companies, to our QSA companies, and asked them, what do you think about this requirement, that requirement, the eligibility criteria of this SAQ, and so on? Council provided us with a training in July, and since September, we are starting already to assess according to DSS4. Remember Emma Sutcliffe upstairs recommending to us, start early. That was something which wasn't aligned between us as a merchant and the council, but I can fully reckon that. The sooner we start dealing with DSS4 based assessments, the more time we will have to discuss and align procedures with our QSA companies. Because we don't only operate with one QSA company, we have multiple QSAs, some of them in this room, thank you very much. And it is important to align on each and every requirement. We will see afterwards why that's important. The objective is that for the whole group, for all these 100 and plus payment channels, we are ready, transitioned to DSS4 by March 24. Because that will then allow us an additional year to fully focus on the future dated requirements. So what challenges did we encounter when we first analyzed DSS4? The first thing is proper understanding. We also had this morning. We are no native English speakers. And even with Brits, I had very interesting discussions about the rewording of specific requirement. It's definitely not easy to understand the rewordings between 3.2.1 and 4.0, at least for us. Then, of course, if you get such a large document, you need to prioritize. You cannot focus on all the requirements. And when we first analyzed DSS4, when it was finally published, we didn't have the SAQs, the supporting document. So we needed to analyze the whole standard. So we needed to prioritize what requirements or what set of requirements might be interesting and important for us. And then, of course, we had to do the impact evaluation. So what impact might that have to us as an organization? Because that was an input to a timeline and also to financial planning process. And it was quite a challenge in the first half of this year to be able to put the right budget with the given restriction or delays in the publication of these documents. Especially because we aim at being ready throughout 2023. Much has been discussed about customized validation and defined validation. Our perspective as a merchant, regardless of the fact that it's not applicable for merchants using SAQs, that's okay. But from our perspective as a merchant, it provides greater flexibility, but to higher costs. Higher costs in the sense that we need to do an additional step. We need to develop testing procedures on our own. While on the defined validation, testing procedures are already provided by the standard. And then additional costs because we have to ask our QSA twice. First, can you please validate the testing procedure? And then, can you please validate our implementation of this testing procedure? From that side, for us as a merchant, defined validation will be continued. I'm not going to talk about the response times, which has been discussed, and we expect the changes by the documents. But let's look on the results of our gap analysis. Let's start first with the card present use case. So we analyzed the eligibility criteria because we all know, all of us being eligible for the SAQs, that these are key. If you don't meet one of these eligibility criteria, this SAQ isn't applicable to us. So we analyzed, is there any rewording? Is there any additional eligibility criteria? Has something on the eligibility criteria been removed, reworded, whatever? No changes. Then we looked into the requirements. Yes, there are some changes on the requirements, but without any financial impact, meaning that we don't need to get some budget to implement a new technology or a new process or new documentation. Some documentation requirements have been changed, that's a fact, but that's nothing we cannot solve with a certain amount of time. And the very important thing for us as a merchant is the strategy to implement certified and listed P2P solutions has been confirmed. We will continue implementing those solutions. But now, since 2 or 3 years, Schwarz Group, operational business, asked us, okay, yeah, it's fine, we have some payment terminals on our tills, we also have some self-checkouts, but now we want to go into the unattended use case. You might have heard about the fancy term omnichannel. We want to be, and we have to be omnichannel. Customers asking for that. Customers asking for a 24/7 Lidl store somewhere. So what do we do with the unattended use case? We have several use cases right now on our desk. We have the EV charging stations. The German government recently released, and the European Union is going to release something even worse in the next couple of years, that all EV charging stations have to be equipped with a payment terminal. Fine for the industry of the terminal manufacturers. My personal opinion is 20 years ago would be fine, but not now anymore, please. So we have this challenge with us. If we would connect these payment terminals to our corporate data network, all the efforts we have been investing in the past in getting the attended POIs embedded into a certified and listed P2P solution would be worth nothing. So in other words, also the unattended payment terminals must be integrated into the certified and listed P2P solutions. And that's a challenge right now because there is hardly any provider out there being able to provide this. So this is a call to all the service providers. Please invest. We will buy. Let's look into the online side of the things, into the SAQA. Again, we compared the eligibility criteria and we saw no changes. But then we went into the requirements. And on the requirement side of things, and we've heard this already this morning, there are some additional future dated requirements which will be discussed heavily, how to best implement them. Throughout this community meeting, we have received several input from vendors, what products, what technologies, what systems, what procedures we might invest in those things. We recognize the importance, but we don't have the solution right now as a merchant. That's as honest as I can tell you. But again, the strategy which we discussed or defined some years ago, that all our online channels must be implemented with iframes, or as it is officially stated, with entirely outsourced payment processing to PCI DSS compliant third-party processors, has been confirmed. So no major revolution for Schwarz. Remember that initially I told you that we have the thesis that we do not store any card order data. Now it's in the assessors to believe us or not. What we are currently doing is setting up a card order data discovery scanner throughout our corporate data network. Of course, we start slowly, first on the POS side of the things at our stores, and then we will expand the scope step by step. With a central scanning infrastructure and local scanning agents being authenticated scans looking for card order data. Because otherwise, our current strategy towards PCI DSS would not be underlined with evidence. We need to provide this evidence to our assessors that we certainly do not store any card order data in order to be able to maintain our SAQ, BAP, P2PE, and SAQA strategy. And one thing which we understood is absolutely key to the process of transitioning is communication. Communication, communication, communication. First of all, internally. We are roughly about 500,000 colleagues. Of course, not all of them deal with payments, but a lot of them deal with payments. Our colleagues at the stores. Then we have to communicate externally to the assessor community, to our service providers, because we rely on the service providers. If the service providers we are engaged with fail to meet the timeline, we as a merchant will fail as well. So please, service providers out there, keep your timelines in order for us to be able to keep our timelines. In essence, standardized procedures guarantee the transitioning to DSS4 with an optimized, efficient effort. Strong collaboration between us as a merchant and the assessors is key to an efficient assessment procedure. And finally, the implementation of innovative technologies will help reduce the impact to the transition to DSS4. Thank you very much and enjoy lunch.